Hi YouTube, Darth here. Today I want to talk a little bit more about Master of Orion and the recent patch that came out during early access. For those wondering, Master of Orion is a 4X empire building game kind of like Civilization in space. It's currently in phase 2 of early access. The recent patch addressed 4 major points: the pacing of the game, adding more races, polishing certain elements of the game, and the first pass of the game's AI. What you're looking at right now is the result of a particularly aggressive Terran Khanate attempting a preemptive attack on me. One of the refinements made in this part of the early access was that they added additional battle controls so you have a little bit more control over the fleet's AIs and what they happen to do in any given battle. Right now I'm telling all my ships to stay as far away from enemy ships as possible. However, because there's so many of them, they tend to intermingle, and I'm not really picky in this battle right now because I'm probably going to win. However, in smaller battles it actually works pretty well. Now if I wanted to take direct control, I can always turn off the battle AI and then just move my ships however I like. As a player, you can get in depth as you like with the micromanagement, but in this case I'm just going to show off this battle, so I'm just going to let it rip after I get them all set up here. And starting battles paused is actually another change that the developers made in this round of the early access. Before this patch, battles would start instantaneously and you would simply jump into the action and then have to pause it and figure it out. Now they give you a chance to set up the battle ahead of time, which is kind of nice, but it's also an option in case you like it the other way. Now for this battle, I have a lot of missile-heavy ships, so it's better for my ships to stand off and fire those. The AI enemy, however, has built a lot of beam-heavy ships, so it's in their benefit to get close to mine. I'm only playing on the middle tier of difficulty, average, so I'm not too worried about the outcome of this battle. And I mostly spent this last weekend playing on average so I could gauge how much the AI had come along. And it's actually quite a bit more aggressive now, as this battle shows. Before, it was rare that they would ever build any kind of significant fleet, and it was even rarer still that they would ever attack me. But now that these bigger battles are in the game, we can start addressing the question of, was real-time combat really worth it, or is turn-based still the way to go? And I think real-time combat is still ideal in this case because honestly I could pause this at any point I wanted and really just get in deep on the controls. For players that don't need that level of depth, for example me in this battle right now, they can just let it play out in a shorter amount of time rather than having to micromanage every little piece of the battle. Or if you're feeling particularly lazy, you can just watch it in cinematic mode as I'm doing right now. But the developers also need to be careful to make sure that players also feel like the battles are worth their time and attention. I don't think it's quite perfect yet, but it definitely feels pretty good for an early stage. And I believe there are at least 2 more early access patches coming along that will introduce content revisions of this magnitude. And because battles are so core to the franchise, it's something the developers definitely want to do right. And they've said and explained this multiple times. One of the other things that this patch did is improve a number of UI elements within the game. For example, the end of battle report is a little bit more detailed than it was before and flows a little bit faster to give you an idea of which ships fell when and how much damage was done. Overall, a lot of improvements like that went into the patch this game, but the biggest and most noticeable ones were the new races. First up is the Terran Khanate, who are sort of a special race that are available to players who pre-order the game, or more specifically get the, I believe, deluxe edition of the game. So now there are 2 human races in the game. One is the diplomatic peaceful race of humans, and the other is the extremely warlike race of humans. Basically mirror opposites of each other, and if you're a fan of Star Trek, there's deeper meaning there. The next race added in the patch is the Meklar. The Meklar are one of 2 industrious races in the game. Their ships also automatically repair after battle, so they're actually pretty formidable in a war. The Meklar would probably be my choice if I were trying to wage an early war of conquest or if I was simply trying to outboom my enemies. Production races tend to be very good on smaller galaxies where you meet your enemy much closer and you go to war much sooner. Now the third race they added in this patch are the Klakons. An insectoid race, they are also one of the production races along with the Meklar. Like the Meklar, they get bonuses to both food and production, but at the same time they also have access to an uber planet called Cavernous. So they lose a little bit of that war machine edge in exchange for a much bigger boom. So that brings the grand total of races up to 9, with at least 2 more coming. Now, one last major change that this patch introduced was a huge overhaul to how fast the player can get through the tech tree. Overall, in my games this weekend, I noticed myself progressing through the tech tree about half as fast, which ultimately means that those mid-game battles tend to last a lot longer before we get to the endgame techs. The endgame techs being things like Death Stars and super lasers and blowing up planets and all that kind of cool stuff. Overall, the pace correction, improved AI, and new content makes this game seem like a much more refined product, and I'm really excited to see more from NGD and Wargaming. But that's it for this quick Master of Orion update. If you're a fan of strategy gaming or the Master of Orion series, I definitely encourage you to check it out in early access on Steam. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time, YouTube.